Welcome back to the Red Dice Diaries. I'm John, and today, following on from yesterday's episode about the Herbalist's Primer, I'm going to be talking about another supplement that I'm using. This time it's a D20/5th edition, I know, shock horror, supplement called Poisonous Plants by LJ Ogre, which coincidentally, whether it's a pseudonym or not, is probably the best name I've heard for someone writing a D&D supplement. So we're going to get straight into having a quick look through this and why I think it's useful after the music. Okay, so this is a 5e compatible project that I backed on Kickstarter a while back now. And as we can see from the table of contents, in a similar manner to the Herbalist's Primer, it's got a section on how you might encounter plants that you can use as an equipment, ingesting poisonous plants, lesser plant poisons, magical uses, medication and symptoms, and then obviously the mainstay is a list of plants, you know, with stats and uses that you can get to them, etc. The author describes it in the introduction as a collection of poisonous rules for the 5th edition of the world's most popular role-playing game. It covers 67 deadly plants and rules for using them to craft alchemical substances, herbal concoctions, and spell enhancements. Each plant is presented with a stat block summarising the plant's type, size, frequency, challenge, and other important information. So obviously a 5th edition stat block is what we're going for here. Now, you might be saying, well, John, why would you be using this and finding this useful as a reference? Because after all, you're not exactly the world's biggest fan of 5th edition. And obviously I'm no like edition wars like Maestro or anything like that. Granted, I prefer the older editions of D&D. It meshes better with my particular style of GMing and my preferences as a player. And as some people have said in like some very insightful comments to my videos recently, it's all about the player and the GM expectations of the game meshing together. However, because all of these editions, regardless of the rules, and obviously the rules vary more in some editions to others, because they're all ostensibly D&D, even if you can't use the exact rules, I find often there's stuff you can pull out of a supplement regardless of edition that with a bit of tweaking you can adapt for your edition of choice. So first of all, we get a section on challenges. That's obviously the D&D 5th edition challenge rating system. I'm familiar with what it's supposed to do. I've heard varying things from like people online and people in person about how accurate or how useful it is. But, you know, I can see why the author's given a nod to that, because obviously it's a part of the 5th edition game system. We have a note that all plant poisons inflict poison damage. Some can also inflict psychic damage due to debilitating effects on the mind. And again, how will I handle this in my older school games where they don't have different types of damage? I just ignore the damage type. That's the easiest way of doing it. If I want to put a particular bit of flavour on it, I can come up with some rules to do that. It's not really that difficult. We get some DCs for like search checks and wilderness checks for finding plants. That's pretty much already rolled into the sort of foraging for food checks you get in OSR clones of old school D&D. So that's fine, I don't need to worry about that. We also get some useful equipment. So it talks about antitoxins, which it says in the core rules, obviously 5th edition here. Antitoxin is cheaper than poison. In reality, poisons abound and antitoxin is hard to come by. Real antitoxins also only work on certain poisons, which makes sense because, you know, they have to have certain chemical compositions to counteract specific poisons. Many real poisons have no antidote. Therefore, in this, they advise GMs to increase the cost of antitoxin to 200 gold pieces or more per vial. And they might also rule that it's completely ineffective against plants that contain multiple poison types, which I think is an interesting bit of advice there. You know, you're trying to make the cures a little bit more scarce to make these poison plants more of a threat. It also talks about alchemy kits, herbalism kits, and cook's utensils. And we get some lovely artwork on this double page spread. Again, very reminiscent of the old botany books. We have a double page spread on ingesting poisonous plants, where it talks about if you accidentally ingest a poisonous plant, Then each stat block contains DCs to identify, using intelligence nature checks, a poisonous plant unit to stop you ingesting them. However, once you have, you know, that's when you're in some serious trouble. But obviously you can use magic like detect poison and disease and stuff like that. It also says there are 4 circumstances where a character may purposely consume a poisonous plant: for intoxication purposes, as part of some sort of trial by ordeal, as part of a medication, or, well, a murderer using plants deliberately to poison somebody. Also, it says there, it says 4, but then there seems to be like 5 eggs. It suggests that you might also use them as part of like coming of age rituals and stuff like that in tribal societies. So it seems like there's a bit of confusion about the numbering there. But you know what? I'll take an extra bullet point and some extra ideas any day of the week. That's fine by me. We have a paragraph on lesser plant poisons where it says many edible plants are also poisonous. They might only be poisonous in certain parts of the plants, so like rhubarb leaves or like apple seeds, for instance, or they might be toxic until they've been processed for consumption. Talks a little bit about how if you've got various sort of, if you're a cook, you can make like intelligence nature checks and stuff like that to prepare them. Creatures that consume improperly prepared edible but toxic plants have to make a constitution saving throw, otherwise they take a small amount of poison damage, half on a successful save. If it's failed by 5 or more, they take another 3 points of damage and they become poisoned. So that's obviously one of the conditions they use in 5th edition. But again, I'm sure I could dig something up to work for that for older school versions of D&D. We have a section on mass poisoning, where it talks about how in like history armies have been poisoned, crops have been contaminated, pastures have been contaminated, there's been famine, food preparation has resulted in like a whole party, like a dinner party, being poisoned. And it just chats a little bit about the various ways in which that might happen in your campaign. We next go on to a double page spread that describes a few guidelines about the interaction between magic and poisons, and we get a list of spells and how they might be useful for determining whether a plant is toxic or not. We get a description of how the sort of poisons are going to be written up in this book as well. Poison descriptions include 2 attributes that are primarily for role-playing rather than game mechanics, so this is a bit I'm bound to be interested in. Medication. Herbalists can craft simple medications from many plants. These medicines can cure minor aches and pains that do not have associated game, like joint pains, rheumatism, that sort of thing. Symptoms. All poisons inflict symptoms such as vomiting, convulsions, or abdominal pain. So that's not the actual like damage that it does, but it's like the physical sort of role-played effects it can have. Ingested poisons are varying onset times listed in the stats blog, and a few of these plants can be used to create anti-parasitic medications, and they say that they're going to do rules for parasitic infections in a future release, so I'm going to keep an eye out for that. That sounds pretty interesting, albeit unpleasant to the unfortunate victim. We're told there are 4 types of poisons in the plant kingdom: ingested, inhaled, touch, and injury. So ingested, nearly all plants are effective when ingested. Inhaled, so toxic that breathing in that pollen or fragrance is dangerous. Touch, simply touching the plant can be dangerous. And injury, which is when you can use them to poison weapons and blades and stuff like that. And there's a little bit of a write-up specifically about weapon poisons. We get told that poisons are defined with the following terms: terrain, where the plant can be found; frequency, how often you're going to find it; the identification difficulty class for if you want to make intelligence nature rolls; the type of poison, ingestion, inhaled, etc.; the ingestion onset, the interval between ingesting a poison and when it starts to take effect; whether protection from poison spells neutralise it or only give you advantage on the saving throw; and medication, where the character is proficient with herbalism and medicine, can automatically craft balms, tinctures and the like from it. Symptoms, the role-playing effect of the poison; traits, a summary of the plant's alternate uses; and challenge, which is obviously the challenge rating. And then we go on to a number of double-page spreads with, again, some beautiful artwork that actually each page has a write-up of one particular plant. And this generally consists of a couple of paragraphs covering the stuff that we've just related. So if we look at Aki here, we're told that it's an evergreen that grows up to 30 feet tall and produces fruit throughout the year. The ripened fruit is safe to eat, but the unripe fruit contains toxins. We're told that a creature that ingests unripe fruit must make a DC 16 con save, taking 6d6 poison damage on a failed save, or half if they succeed. If the saving throw fails by 5 or more, they take another 3d6 poison, and they fall unconscious for 1d6 hours. We're told that it has a number of industrial uses. The ackee wood is used in foundations, oars and casks, and a fragrant perfume can be made from its flowers. We're also told that the unripe fruit can be pounded into a mash and dumped into a lake, pond or other body of water, and any aquatic creatures that enter the affected area must make a con saving throw or they will take poison damage. Anyone proficient with the cooking utensils and the various abilities associated with that can automatically render it safe via preparation. If you've not got those skills in that kit, you have to make a knowledge nature roll to do that. And we get a little stat block which gives its terrain, its frequency, identification DC, and all of that. And if we just scroll through quickly, we've got a number of plants here, all with a very similar write-up and some very striking artwork. And this is the main part of the supplement, which is handy because it's the bit that I'm most interested in. And as with the yesterday's episode that we did where I was talking about the Herbalist's Primer, I really love this stuff because it allows me to add just that note of extra sort of depth and an extra dimension to my description of plants in my sessions. Oh, we've got some toxic algae there and a picture of some sort of unfortunate adventurer struggling out of this filmy slime of green muck. That looks distinctly unpleasant. I'm going to have to bookmark that for future use in a game. I'm sure my players would love that. Then we continue scrolling through. We have an appendix which talks about the various conditions you can find yourself under as a result of these poisonous plants. And then we obviously have the obligatory open game license and the back cover where it describes itself as the A to Z guide to toxic plants. And there we go. That is the Poisonous Plants supplement by LJ Ogre. As I say, I backed this on Kickstarter. It didn't cost me a great deal, although I only got the PDF version because shipping's fairly dank at the minute. But I really like this as a PDF. You know, if you just want the odd, if I was going to run a convention game or a game face to face, it wouldn't take me a lot to just print out a handful of pages and take those with me. So I've got like plant details, or I could copy and paste just like the stat block into my notes. It's very clearly laid out using a nice template with some really nice artwork spread throughout. As I've said, the text's pretty clear to read, albeit a little bit small for my old eyes. It's a 2-column layout, A4 page size, and the headings are very descriptive, so it's not difficult to page through and quickly find what you want. My only slight gripe is there's no index at the end of it. I do like an index, but given that it's only 90 pages long and the table of contents pretty much says all that you need, I'm not too overly stressed about that. But I think that, again, this is a really useful supplement. And I know I keep harping on about plants and herbs and stuff like that, but again, I find it really useful just as an idea generate. You know, flipping through it, you can come across these poisonous plants, these toxins, think, right, well, how could that be used in an adventure? And it just adds a little bit of depth and interest to your game world. So if you're interested in this Poisonous Plants PDF, I'm not sure if it's available for general purchase yet. I'll have a look, and if I can find some links for it, I will put them in the description of this episode. If you get a chance, like I say, it wasn't too expensive on the Kickstarter, and you want to use some poisonous plants, even if you're really not into 5th edition, you'll find something useful in here. But if you are, you will definitely find something of use if you want to lean more into that botanical side of life. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to get in touch and tell us a bit about what botanical supplements you find useful in your own games, or maybe it's not even a role-play supplement at all, maybe it's just a book that you like reading that has some useful information for your games, then get in touch, tell us about that. We'd love to hear about that. Maybe you want to chat about these particular supplements that we've recently covered, or just about anything to do with RPGs. We'd love to hear from you, and your voicemail might even get featured in a future episode. We're currently doing the voicemail response episodes just on the podcast, not on the YouTube channel, but if you want to see them on the YouTube channel, shout up and we can make that happen. There's a couple of ways you can get in touch. You can leave us a voicemail using either SpeakPipe or Anchor, link in the description down below, or you can send us an email to rddrpgpodcast@gmail.com. So until we see you again, take care, stay safe, and whatever you play, have fun. Catch you soon.